Live better and longer with the Fitzness Show, hosted by fitness expert, author, and TV personality Fitz Kohler. She'll tell you why diets are dumb, supplements are snake oil, and the truth about how you can earn a lean, hard, pain-free, and athletic body. Now for our favorite bossy blonde, Fitz Kohler.
Well, hi team. I'm Fitz Kohler, your super bossy fitness pro from fitzness.com, and welcome to the Fitzness Show. Today we have a doozy of an episode. My guest is kind of a legend, not only in my own community, but in the healthcare community, and you'll hear why. But if you haven't done so yet, don't forget to click like and subscribe and all the things, blah, 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 wherever you listen to the Fitzness Show. If you do that, then when I come on and I make happy noise and boss you around, you'll know to tune in. And yeah, I'll be able to poke you in the chest and get you doing the right things to do better and be better. So my guest today is Dr. Bill Slayton. Now, listen, we hear the word doctor and we think, oh, fancy and smart and important. And that's true. But this guy is above and beyond. He is a professor of pediatrics, but he is a physician, a hematology oncologist that works with children with cancer. And he was the director of the Pediatric Oncology Division at the University of Florida Health Center, UF Health, for 17 years. And, you know, as so many of us, we would think, why would anybody do that? How scary, how stressful to be involved with kids with cancer. And thank God for Dr. Slayton for stepping up to the plate and saying, yeah, I know it's scary and stressful, but I want to help. And we're going to hear his stories, but he's saved so many lives, right? That's the benefit of him taking this burden on, is all the positive impacts he's made in so many lives. And I know so many of the families whose children he saved, which just, mind blowing. Can you imagine doing that for a living? Saving children with cancer. So yeah, he's a magical entity. And I know he's probably blushing backstage. He's also the author of a new book, Stunt Mole. And we're going to talk about that. And I asked him, what would you like me to tell the folks about you? And very sweet. He focused on his wife. Now, I know his wife personally. She was my children's pediatrician for a very long time. Brilliant and just common sense. It's just a wicked. Can you imagine the smarts in this one family? Outrageous. But she's also the medical director for Camp Boggy Creek, which is Paul Newman's camp for kids with chronic illnesses. And again, I know so many kids who have gone to that camp and just thrived because of it. He also sings a cappella in the Barbie Gators group. I've heard him sing at the fitness center. He showed up with these guys and they sing and spread some holiday cheer, and the Duke of Earlton. And he's a dad. He's a dad of 3 adult children and just a pillar in our community. And I love him so much. So here he comes, Dr. Slayton. Thank you for being on the Fitzness Show.
Thank you, Fitz. I am so honored to be here. And yeah, I'm ready to go.
Okay. Did I get it right? Did I screw up any of your credentials?
No. Thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Yeah. I mean, I was on a guest on a radio show in Cincinnati earlier today, and then I connected with the host after, and I told him you were coming on. He said, who would want to do that? And I was like, oh, thank God he did that. So can you tell us, how did you get into pediatric oncology? Were you drawn by the kids first or the cancer?
Well, definitely by the kids. I'm very interested in helping kids, and I have always liked being around kids. I think I'm kind of like a little kid in a lot of ways. As are many pediatricians, we enjoy interacting with the kids, and a lot of our practice is actually just playing around with them and having fun. But the oncology part is a little different. My dad was an oncologist back in the 1960s when pretty much nobody would survive their cancer. At that time, you really had to be able to cut out the cancer or be able to get a radiation beam around it for somebody to get a cure. And, most types of cancers didn't have cures. And he went into the field like as a pioneer. I always admired him growing up, but I wasn't sure this was really something for me until, I was pretty much 3/4 of the way through medical school and working with cancer patients and really feeling at peace, working with them and their families. So it was kind of a long path, but I do feel like, you know, we serve the world best by finding out what we're good at, and I feel like this is an area that I have some gifts that I got from my father, and I feel, like I've done a lot of good, which I feel really grateful for at this point in my life.
Now, so you make a decision, you're like, okay, oncology and pediatrics, was that scary?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like it all happened in one sort of sitting, but rather, I decided I would be a pediatrician first. And, in medical school, you get exposed to everything. So psychiatry, surgery. I liked every rotation I did, but I was most happy working with the kids. And so, it became clear that that was what I was going to do. And then the oncology part came a little bit later after being in my pediatric residency for a couple of years. I always thought that maybe I would be an oncologist, but I really made the commitment somewhere between my second and third year. You kind of have to make a decision at that point of what you're going to do. And I had thought about it up until then, but I really knew at that point.
So, what's it like when you have a family come in and, their prized person, their heart shows up in your office with cancer?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the hardest things a parent can go through. And of course, it's hard for the kid too, for sure. And so, I try to be prepared for the visit. I try to have looked at the imaging and the patient's labs and have a clear idea of what's going on. And then I try to come up with a plan with the family. I sit down and I listen to their story. I try to connect with the kid. The littler kids have certain fear of physicians. So I try to break through that I have a little bag of tricks to kind of get them to not be afraid of me. And then I try to come up with the best plan that I can that gives the kid his best or her best chance of being cured. In leukemia and lymphoma care, our cure rates are extremely high, but the cancer comes back, it can be very hard to cure. And so we try to figure out a plan that's going to get rid of it the first time.
So, what's in your bag of tricks that makes you less frightening and more fun for the kids?
Well, I always address the kid first, and I'll go in the room and maybe they're wearing Crocs. I'll say something about their Crocs, and I'll tell them my name is Dr. Bill, and I don't do owies. I don't say that to the 15-year-old, but I'll say it to the 4-year-olds or the 2-year-olds, because they associate being in the doctor's office with getting poked, and I always tell them right away that I don't do owies. Now, sometimes their parents say, "Oh yeah, he oversees the people who do the owies." I'm like, "No,
Right.
don't say that because I don't want them to be afraid of me." But I have some other things. I have this little fart joke that I do with the older kids where I press on their belly and I make a sound. It's easier to do if you're wearing a mask because they don't know where the sound is coming from. And I tell the little Spanish kids that my name is Dr. Sapo Loco, which is crazy toad. And so, they come to know me as Dr. Sapo Loco, which is they all know me as Dr. Bill. I don't like I think our whole group tries not to be real formal. We believe it's a team sport and we include the parents and the kids in the team. We're all trying to work towards a cure together.
Right. Well, it's funny as you say, I don't do owies. And we will be right back. Ho, ho, holy cow. The holidays are upon us and it's time to go shopping. That's right. If you are looking for a meaningful and affordable gift to give to all your friends and family, stop by fitzness.com. Right now, we're running a special on fitzness.com. It's order 4 books, get one free. And you can do that in like 7, 8, 10 sets of that, depending on how many friends and family members you have. Yeah, spend 20 something bucks on a book and upgrade your friends' lives forever. Help them look, feel, and perform better forever. Sounds like a generous gift to me. So go shopping at fitzness.com. No matter how many books you order, they all will come signed. They all will come with their special little Fitzy gift, and they will all be packaged with love. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Festivus for the rest of us. We're back. I wish I had some medical professionals tell me that they were not going to deliver any owies to me because being poked, no fun. But you know what? My nurses did that. Dr. Gordon never did. And for that, I held no grudge against Dr. Gordon, which I imagine is a brilliant oncology trick. So how do you see? So these poor kids have done nothing, right? There's so many grown-up style cancers which are lifestyle related, right? Maybe we've been out in the sun too much without sunscreen, or we smoked, or we ate poorly. But you get these kids and they've done absolutely nothing wrong. And of course, I was always grateful for my cancer. I just thought, well, at least it's not my kids. So that was my saving grace. So how do you help a parent through this situation?
Well, I think that it's really natural for the parents to think about what they might have done that led to their kid's cancer. But, in most instances, there's nothing. They've actually looked at this, through epidemiological studies and looked at, do hot dogs cause cancer? Do power lines cause cancer in kids? And, what they've found is that there's very little out there that you can tie to it directly. And that in most cases, it's bad luck where, our bodies are amazing in the sense that for us to grow, all these tiny little cells have to divide. And there's all this information in them, the DNA, that is really the blueprints of all the machinery in our cells. Some of the blueprints are for switches that turn on cell division and they allow you to grow. But if you mess up the blueprint, you can end up making switches that turn on and don't turn off. And, every time a cell divides, all of that information that is in the DNA has to be copied correctly for the next cell to be a healthy cell. And, things have to go wrong for that cell to go haywire. Our immune system can actually pick up on the fact that a cell has got mutations in it that are unhealthy and get rid of it. But sometimes the immune system is down too. And then, the cancer arises. By the time we're old, there's so many of these cell divisions that have occurred. Many, many, many of us have cancer by the time we're my age. I'm turning 62 this year. But if you're a little kid, there's a lot fewer of those cells having gone through division, but there's still trillions and trillions of cell divisions where all that DNA was copied correctly. So it's a miracle that it goes well. And yet it does go well most of the time. And cancer is very, very unusual in kids, but it's usually a chance mutation that leads to a kid getting cancer, not some exposure that, their parent could have protected them from.
Now, I hear that there hasn't been any major strides in pediatric cancer in decades. That's the rumor flying around. Is that true?
No, that's not true at all. In fact, the cure rate, when my dad was a physician, when he started, the cure rate for acute lymphoblastic leukemia was 3%, and it's now close to 100%.
Wow.
They've really, really improved the cure rate in acute lymphoblastic leukemia a lot. In other forms of leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia, it's not as great, but it is still a lot better than 3%. We're curing somewhere between 60 and 70% of the kids with acute myeloid leukemia. In Hodgkin's disease, the cure rate's close to 100%.
Wow.
And other forms of lymphoma, it's between 85 and 100%, depending on the type. So, for the liquid cancers in children, the story is really optimistic. There are forms of childhood cancer that have not progressed as well, like the bone tumors. Our center is actually quite excellent at treating bone tumors. And, we have a lot of good research going on in that area because we have some of the best surgeons in the country here. And also, Joanne Lagnay and her team are the best oncologists, arguably some of the best in the world at UF for those types of cancer, but they've not improved a lot over the span of my career. Brain tumors also have not come as far, although we are making some progress in both of those areas.
What do you think about the use of AI? Do you think that will help find some of these cures? I mean, is there going to be any good news that comes with AI and cancer?
Definitely, AI is it's an amazing invention of humans, and we were early adopters of AI. At UF Health, we've had this supercomputer here for over a decade that is one of the fastest computers in the world. And I know they keep upgrading it, but they've used that computer for drug discovery. There's a guy named Dave Ostroff at UF Health who studies the shapes of proteins, and he's used that supercomputer to find small molecules that will bind to those proteins and essentially turn them off. It'll block them from turning on other proteins, turning off the switch that's mutated in a lot of the cancer cells.
That's incredible. You know what's very funny is sometimes our sports teams aren't doing so great, Gator football this year, but someone will constantly be like, "Your team's not so great." I'm like, "Yeah, but we have the Cancer Institute and the Diabetes Institute and the Brain Institute, so we've still got a lot to brag about at the University of Florida, right?"
Oh yeah, and lots of different sports.
Hmm.
So we've got great baseball, basketball. The women's teams are all fantastic.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to be proud of here. But yeah, and then we have wonderful, wonderful research going on here. Our pediatric group is one of the world's leading groups in the area of immunotherapy for cancer. And the immunotherapy is really moving cures forward in a really amazing way. In my field, we're using an engineered antibody now that has very, very little in the way of side effects. And remember, I said that the cure rate's close to 100%. That last 10% has been really hard to achieve, but the immunotherapy is what's bringing us to very close to 100%. And we can use the immunotherapy when our patients get bad infections from the regular types of chemotherapy. The immunotherapy can be used as a bridge, and it's incredibly powerful with very little in the way of side effects. It's really
So,
cool.
can you explain immunotherapy in like simplistic forms to our audience who may not understand how that works?
Yeah, I think we've known for a long time that the human immune system is set up in a way that it can recognize cancer and actually get rid of cancerous cells. And the immune system is there to keep things that are in our body that shouldn't be there, to keep them from causing problems. So, you get strep throat. I don't know if you've had it. I've had it a few
Yes.
times. Your throat gets really, really sore. You take antibiotics, it gets better over a few days. If you don't take antibiotics, the strep throat will eventually go away. The immune system will take care of it. But the immune system can do harsh things to your heart. It can cause rashes. And people used to get this thing called rheumatic fever if you didn't treat strep throat, because the immune system would start attacking the body, a person's body in sort of an autoimmune response. But what we've known is that there's certain types of cancer that are very sensitive to the immune system if the immune system can be harnessed to to attack the cancer. One area where we had a clue is we would do these bone marrow transplants in patients with leukemia. And when they're if the leukemia came back after the bone marrow transplant, it suggested that there were cells that survived a ton of chemotherapy. They were like uber cells. They're really, really strong cells that survived. But you could take the T cells from the donor, so the immune cells from the donor, and you can infuse them into the patient and you can make the cancer go away. Just the immune system. And more recently, they've started to use antibodies, which are proteins that our bodies make to fight infection. An antibody is shaped like a slingshot. So there's a part of it that's like where the V is,
Mm-hmm.
where you have the rubber band that binds to bacteria or viruses. And then the handle of the slingshot is the immune system uses it as a handle. So imagine a bunch of little slingshots that have stuck to a round bacteria. So you have all these handles protruding from like a little ball that's circulating in your blood. The spleen has cells in it that'll grab onto those handles and pull the bacteria out of circulation. So that's the way, when we get vaccines and things, that's the way they protect us from infection by, our body learns to produce antibodies to those things. Well, we've started to make antibodies to cancerous cells, and those antibodies are really effective. One area that, maybe 2 decades ago, they started using antibodies made in mice to treat neuroblastoma, which was a disease that killed our youngest kids, like kids between ages 2 and 4. These kids would, they might respond to chemotherapy for a little while. We would treat them with everything in our bag of tricks. So we would treat them with chemotherapy. They would get radiation. They would have a bone marrow transplant, and still about 50% of them would relapse. And then they started using antibodies to the neuroblastoma cells, and they would do it after all the other treatment, and it increased the cure rate by about 30%. So now most of those kids are surviving, whereas at the beginning of my career, they weren't. So now they're producing antibodies that are even more engineered, but they're still pretty simple. They're antibodies, instead of being like a slingshot with a handle, they're antibodies that have two V shapes, one on each end, and both of them recognize something that they stick to. So they call these antibodies bites, and the bite antibodies can bind to a cancer cell, and they can stick to a T cell, which are cells in our immune system that can blow up cancer cells. And just by the act of making them stick to each other, those bite antibodies can put somebody in a remission, and with very, very little side effect. It doesn't seem like it would work, but it works incredibly well.
Are you floored? I mean, it's just, I, I don't even know who's out there thinking of these tricks and treatments. It's wild to me. Are you still absolutely mesmerized by the things people are coming up with to kill cancer?
No, totally. And the things that they're finding are sometimes really surprising. So, our team has a system to set up the immune system to think that the tumor cells are a virus. So they are essentially creating a particle using the RNA from the tumor, which is expressed in the tumor cells, but not in the healthy cells. And they're getting that to be recognized by the immune system as being foreign. And they're seeing amazing responses to it. So they're using that now in brain tumors to try to help improve the cure rates, and also in the bone tumors. And is amazing high-tech medicine, but essentially using a system that's been around, since, we, we evolved billions of years ago. These systems of immunity have been around for a long, long time.
That's incredible. Now, what do you think the chances are that 10 years from now, we won't have to see kids dying of cancer? I mean, when does it go away? Do we ever get a vaccination for it? What are your hopes?
There are vaccines that actually prevent cancer. The vaccine to the human papillomavirus
Yeah.
prevents cervical cancer. And, there are other viruses that are implicated in cancer, like the Epstein-Barr virus that causes mononucleosis. So, yes, I do think that there are vaccine approaches that can be helpful in terms of keeping people healthy, but I do think it's gonna get better and better. Some of the best minds in the world are working on these questions, and, the United States has always been a leader in cancer research, and, I hope that we continue to wear that mantle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? Definitely us, but if not us, somebody. Just, I've gone to the ASCO conference and it was really heartening to see so many brilliant people, thousands and thousands of doctors and researchers that are just there with one focus is to figure out how to cure the cancer, prevent the cancer, find more humane treatments. It was something that made me leave feeling better about the situation.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I don't want to eat up all your time. And I want to talk about your book. But before we get there, being a health and fitness podcast, I mean, I'm always encouraging people to control what they can, definitely not make excuses, and health during hardship. Big focus because I truly believe your health matters more than anything when things hit the fan, when someone gets sick or the house burns down or you have financial stress. The habits of exercise and nutrition are going to carry you through. They're more important than ever. And so, how have you managed your own health with such a demanding job? And then how do you encourage your patients and their families to pursue healthy habits during their cancer crisis?
Oh, it's a really important question. And I think when people get a diagnosis of cancer, either themselves or in their family members, a lot of the tendency is to let good habits go out the window. But let me just first comment on personally, I have always felt that it was important for me to stay fit in order to really protect my mental health. I was a swimmer in high school. I always found when I was swimming that the rest of my life was a little lighter, a little easier, and I was a lot calmer when I was swimming because, I had spent all that time in the pool, and it's a very meditative kind of practice to swim. I think similarly running, people get these endorphins when they run, you get them when you swim. These things are good for our mental health, and so I built time into my life early in the morning. My kids were always up around 6. I was helping Marcy, who also, she worked as a pediatrician, and so I had to be there for her. So I worked my exercise routine into my early morning schedule and really have done that through my whole career. I am an early bird and I go to bed early. I go to bed at 9:30 to 10 o'clock. And if I stay up later than that, I'm not great the next day. So, in terms of how do we emphasize this with our families, I've read your book, the Healthy Cancer Comeback book, which I thought was really amazing.
Thank you.
And I think that, this is a really good message that resonates with the older kids that, yes, they can take care of their bodies while they're going through their treatment. And yes, they should try to take care of their bodies to eat well and to exercise if they can. And, it's some of our patients can actually continue their routine through their whole treatment. I would say it's a minority, but it's not zero. And the patients who can't do it all the time at least should be thinking about this when they can do it, and especially when they are recovering from their cancer. We have hired a dietitian to our team from donation from a parent who believed really strongly that good nutrition was key to being well during treatment. So we have a dietitian in Case who's really outstanding at identifying ways to enhance the nutrition of the patients as they go through their treatment. Our diets tend to be not very healthy in the United States generally, and the things that kids see as comfort food is not always the healthiest thing. Chicken nuggets, French fries, hamburgers, pizza. And, it can be especially challenging in a 2-year-old who, has a very narrow palate to get them to eat things that are healthier. And, sometimes we just have to choose our battles, but we definitely pay attention to this. We think it's important. And, hopefully over time we'll know more and more about it and know ways how to, best achieve behavioral changes in our patients.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll ever be just like perfect and easy. Even someone like me, as you mentioned, the palate, that's it. When everything tastes bad and your tummy feels bad, you got to eat what you can when you can. But I'm glad that you guys certainly encourage quality nutrition and movement. And it's interesting how many people, when they're diagnosed, I'm guessing of all ages, their world says, okay, stop playing, stop exercising, stop going out, stop doing any of the things you're doing. And I really encourage people to lean in. No, if you're fighting for your life, you might as well live your life while you have it, right? So,
Yeah.
if you're strength training, you can slow the regression. You may still regress. I certainly did, but it never got as bad as I imagine it would have been had I not been continuously doing what I could when I could, right?
Yeah, exactly. Some of our medicines actually cause problems with leaching the bones of calcium, like the steroid medicines.
Yeah.
Well, in addition to making you put on weight, they cause osteoporosis. And so, it's important to do weight bearing types of things in order to prevent osteoporosis. And, the question is, when is the best timing for that, et cetera. But, we think that our patients should be walking and dancing if they can dance, and exercising if they can do it while they're going through their therapy.
Being in Gainesville, the rumor mill is big. It's a small-ish town. We all tend to know each other. And all of my friends who their children have been treated by you, they just are so deeply grateful for your care and your brilliance. And, you've impacted so many lives.
Are you looking for the perfect gift for a loved one battling cancer? The Cancer Comeback Series by Fitz Kohler offers hope, inspiration, and practical guidance. With Your Healthy Cancer Comeback, My Noisy Cancer Comeback, and The Healthy Cancer Comeback Journal. These books are a lifeline for all patients and survivors. Right now, you can order autographed copies at a special discount. Show your support and help a loved one go from sick to strong. Visit fitzness.com today. That's FITZNESS.com. Fitzness.com.
Are you retiring or did you just step down from being the director?
Well, I've stepped down from being the director, and I do plan to retire very soon. So my wife, Marcy, is also a physician, and she is now the medical director out at Camp Boggy Creek, which is about 2 hours from here. She's actually at camp right now at meetings and stuff. I was there this morning and have driven back to Gainesville to take care of the cat. And we still have 2 houses, but I plan in July to retire and then go and be a volunteer at camp and help her, you know, take care of the kids who are having a good time there.
Wow, you two are a match made in heaven. I mean, I remember when Marcy's brother told me I should consider Marcy as a pediatrician when I was pregnant with Ginger. And then I met her and I thought, whoa, she's so smart. She was also fun and friendly. I just really liked her. And then someone told me about you. And I thought, oh, well, for the love of God, there's so many brains in that family. If anything went sideways with my kids, I know that we'd have all the best information there. So just what a blessing you both are.
Well, thank you. You need to ask Marcy about brains and stuff because there's this little song that I have to sing sometimes when I do stupid things around here.
Let's hear it.
It goes to "Oh My Darling Clementine," but it's "I'm a dumb shit, I'm a dumb shit." Yeah, Scott was in on helping write that song too, as you can imagine. So,
It sounds like a Scott song. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Okay, so besides all of this life-saving, cancer-crushing day job you have written a book. It's Stunt Mole. It's fantastic. Tell the folks about your new book.
yeah, well, I decided to write a book when I sort of experienced some of the anxieties that my kids were having that I think resulted to some degree from the COVID pandemic. They were all locked down. They were not able to go to school and they were starting to have panic attacks. And this is something that I had experienced as a kid. And so I decided I was going to write about it to see if it would be something that would be helpful to them. As I got further along in writing about it, I came to realize maybe it would help some other people too. And so I've decided to, go ahead and publish it. It's about growing up in the 1960s and 70s in the Midwest, and it's full of humor, a lot of stories about my family. And then, it's also a story about resilience. And my family has a long history of mental illness, and I wasn't spared from it. And so it's got some kind of information in there about how I was able to overcome that and actually, become an adult who was able to help other people.
Now, there requires a lot of humility for you to share some of those darker days and struggles. Did you ever think twice about putting it all out there?
Definitely. Yeah, I think people who read this will be surprised by my story. And yet I do think it really played a major role in me being able to relate to kids who are struggling. And, I really, at my core, I want to help kids, and I think that comes from my experiences in childhood. There's a lot in there about people who did little kind things that were really helpful to me. And, I find that this is something that gives me a lot of joy is to do kind things for my patients, but also for the people that are in my life. And so, I do think that compassion is a key element to healing. And when we're compassionate and helpful to other people, it helps us on our own journey. And so that's what my book is about.
So, I imagine people just think you have it easy and all the things. Dr. Slayton couldn't have any problems. He couldn't have had any struggles. I think people are going to be surprised to realize that you're real,
Eh,
right?
yeah, I don't know. I feel very real, but I do think they'll be surprised by some of the stories in that book. I actually have a total of 4 books that are in my imagination. One of them's already written, but the surprises will continue if you follow along in my journey because, I learned some of the secrets in my own family that were surprising to me as they unfolded. And so that's going to be something of interest to people who decide to look at my book.
So, what was your writing process like? How did you get it all done, doing all the other things you do?
Yeah, I would love to hear about your writing process too, but I actually started off by writing at night and on weekends, and I would write maybe 1 or 2 chapters at a time, and it was kind of painful, and I wasn't really getting anywhere because, I was waiting for the spirit to move me, but it would never move me. Then I had a hip replacement. I have this thing called a cam deformity, which causes arthritis in my hips. And so I had a hip replacement. So I was sitting in a chair for 6 weeks and I pounded it out during that time frame. And and then I finished it and I'm like, I really don't like this book. I don't think anybody is going to really get any benefit from it. And so I just put it aside and I didn't look at it for another year and a half, maybe.
Wow.
And then I had my other hip replaced, and I had been meaning to go back and look at it. I I had I've been listening to, meditations that are on the 10% Happier app, and there's a guy named George Mumford who is a meditation coach. He was the coach for Michael Jordan and
Oh,
for
wow.
Bryant. So really good person for learning how to, get into the flow, et cetera. And he talked about writing his book and how he wrote it, he didn't like it, he put it down, and then he went back and he looked at it, after a period of time, and he was like, "This isn't this isn't half bad." And so that was my experience. Is seemed pretty. It seemed better than what I thought when I put it down. But I also decided I wanted to make it into something more beautiful because it was kind of a sad story, and I I'm a fun, optimistic person, and I like to tell stories in a fun way, and so I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna really dress this thing up," and so, I went back and reworked it, and I really decided that the theme of the book was gonna be about heroes, and it was gonna be, "What is a hero?" And so from the opening passages, it has a hero theme. My mom, the story goes is that she tried to save this kid who was drowning in Lake Michigan, and she was, like, 13 years old and was the only one who swam well enough to try to save this kid. So this kid got swept off a pier, and there were these big waves. She wasn't able to get him, and so she was like, "I'm not a hero, I didn't save this kid." But, I think a lot of us felt like the fact that she tried to save the kid was heroism. And, my mom through my life did so many things to help me. And so, in my book, of course, my mom was a hero. My dad was a hero. He was an oncologist. But there's a lot of kids in that book who also did little heroic things. There's bullying in my book. And, the kids who were my friends when other people were bullying me, that took guts. That, that is, part of the psychology of bullying is that you scare everybody into not, you know, speaking up. I had some friends who, maybe they didn't physically stand up for me, but they were in my corner. And so the book has a lot of quiet heroism like that in it that I hope people find to be uplifting.
Well, A, it's very well written and your stories are absolutely charming. But I love the fact that people reading it might be encouraged to see their own heroics and be able to identify that, yeah, I did something good. And even if it didn't turn out perfectly, I still, I put myself out there and encourage them to do even more of that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a book that platforms people who are doing nice things for each other. The other thing that I would say is that, I grew up at a time where depression and anxiety really didn't have names. And so kids who were suffering from these things in the school system, really the teachers didn't know what to do with them and the parents didn't know what to do with them. And my parents were really smart, but they thought I was just faking that I had a lot of somatic complaints like stomach aches and I would vomit at weird times. And they thought I was just faking it, and, um, but, growing up in that sort of system, you have to find ways to take care of your mental health, maybe without medicines or without counseling. At least that's what I was sort of stuck with, and I found that music was like an incredible way for me to soothe my anxiety. So I would play my viola. And eventually I got a guitar and learned to play guitar. And my whole life I've been a singer, and that music has been a key thing. And then exercise also has been really, really important to me. And I learned that it is one of the ways to help with depression and panic attacks is to have an exercise routine. And so yeah, this is something that I discovered in college. And then, finally, meditation really played a huge role in me being able to finish college on time. And I've used it really through my whole life during times of real turmoil. I used it during COVID. Marcy and I were on the front lines. I had a division of elderly practitioners, who are at risk. And then the patients, my kids, the risk of dying from COVID was 30 times what it was to be a healthy kid. And and so, I really got back into meditation then. My daughter and I got into kickboxing during that time frame. It was before my hips went crazy, but that was also, a really amazing time to work out with my daughter, Anna. And, we would go to our trainer's yard outdoors. He had an outdoor gym, and we would do our workouts there.
So you know what I love is that you're doing the Exhibit A thing. I mean, this is the kind of the stuff I'm always trying to hit my audience over the head with is you have to be in charge of you. Even when things are hard, you have to focus on exercise and you have to focus on your own mental health. And, of course, your parents, they didn't know any better. So hard to curse people for their, just simple ignorance. But you've spent your life throwing yourself a lifeline. You've said, okay, I need to figure this out. I need to feel better. Exercise makes me feel better. Meditation makes me feel better. And you really have kept yourself afloat by making really good decisions. And what a good role model for everybody else.
No, I thank you, Fitz, but also books help me. And, like your book, which I'm sure is helping a lot of people recover from cancer or just to I know your newest book is talking about how to be your best self. And I definitely want to read it because I'm sure I'm going to learn some things. But, back then there was a book called The Relaxation Response, and it talked about the role of exercise in, in calming anxiety and panic attacks, but also talked about music. All these things that I am telling you about are things that I picked up from a book. And so here I am now writing my book, and
So
you've got
awesome.
your books, but these are things to try, to see if we can help other people.
Yeah. And you never stop. That's your MO is just keep helping and helping and helping. Okay. So where can people buy Stunt Mold?
Well, actually, it should be available on Amazon by by December the 12th.
Okay.
Maybe last week. I'm not sure when this is going to go live, but
Good.
yeah, I've got it actually.
Let's see it. Let's see it.
And this is it. I've got all of Marcy's tabbed her
Oh, it's beautiful.
the proof, which I've marked up, and I'm going to be finishing that hopefully tonight. There will be a color version, a black and white version, and then it'll also be available on Kindle. I also have a Substack that is essentially a Substack called Heroes, Hard Work, and Healing. And there I am serializing my book. So people, if they don't want to buy the book, they can get it there for free, but it's going to come out one chapter at a time. So that might be a hard way to swallow it. But it'll be there for people who want to look at it. And I'm also interviewing people in the health field, but also in music, and also people who are working in camps. about what brings them joy and, how they bring compassion into their work and into their lives. And so if you are interested in those types of stories, I'll be telling a lot of other people's stories there. I would love to interview you too, Fitz, there. They're all written stories rather than podcasts, but I would love to interview you and write some things about your career helping people become their best selves.
Anything for you. That's a hardcore yes. But your Substack, what is the address of it?
Yeah, the Substack, it's here. I have to actually read it because it's pretty new. It's William Slayton at Heroes, Heartwork, and Healing. And if you go to Substack and you look up William Slayton, it'll take you right there.
Okay. Okay. And then the same on Amazon. And folks, you should get this too, especially maybe for the teenagers in your life, the kids who are maybe going through it. They could use a little encouragement from someone who's been through it. And then, completely, I mean, golly, I know nothing's perfect, but you're killing it right now.
Yeah.
You've done really good for yourself, Dr. Slayton. You get all the stars for all the reasons.
No, thank you for being interested in what I'm doing. And I, I think we're on this earth to help one another. And this is like one of the things my uncle always said, is, yeah, this is what I'm here for. I'm here to help. And I think that my writing as I retire will become my way of you know, helping other people and, sharing my perspective, trying to solve problems. The world is not, there's a lot of need in the world.
Yeah, well, my favorite part about what I do is when I get to actually connect with people live, right? Live audience stuff just, if it's hard to describe what it does to me internally, but it's bliss. But with these books, especially my newest one, up until the point where I actually hit publish on it, I had a little bit of fear thinking, please don't get hit by a bus this week. I just want that book out because it's full of solutions, and I so desperately wanted everybody to have the access to this information, the truth about fitness. There's so many lies and scammers and vultures and snake oil. And I just was like, this is so meaningful to me to get it out. So now that it's out, of course, I still don't want to get hit by a bus, but I feel a lot of peace in my heart. And I know that, with your books being out, you leave this legacy of support that will be here long after you and I are gone. I just, there's such great value in books and you've written a really great one. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to read it, Fitz, and I really appreciate you interviewing me about it.
Of course, of course. I'm one of your biggest fans. And that's probably a loaded statement because the competition is heavy duty for your biggest fan, but
Yeah.
but it's for real. Okay, so as we wind things down, because I know you've got a life, etc. I have two things I ask my guest at the end of each show. So number one is a communication tip, just some whatever it could be. I mean, it could be like a stiff handshake or look people in the eye. Do you have any communication tips that you'd like to impart with our audience?
Oh, well, I always walk into a room with a happy face, and often in my patient's room, I walk into a room singing a song. So they've come to know me for that. But I think it's good to carry your joy with you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that. And then here's the other one. This one's challenging for some people, but I need you to give a recommendation for song of the show, some sort of song you want people to put on their Spotify list today and exercise to.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if this is great exercise music, but I love Jack Johnson. It's kind of, I think if you exercise to him though, you might get kind of big. I don't know. But he's one of my favorite musicians. Yeah, Better
Yep.
Together.
Better Together. I was going to say that's a
Yeah,
great song.
that's the story of Marcy and my life right now. We're better together because we're living in two different cities, and so
Well, I love you guys together. Again, too much intelligence, A lot of people could be uncomfortable with that, but I'm not. I love the Slayton brains. All right. And the last thing you got to do, Dr. Slayton, is you got to look into the camera. And with gusto, you got to tell people to get to work.
Get to work.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being on my show, folks. If you haven't done so yet, go straight to Amazon, look up William Slayton, the stunt mole, and also check out You Supercharged, because we both got great books you need to hear. Thank you. Happy holidays, everybody.
Hi, this is Rudy Novotny, the voice of America's Marathons. We all love how much running has benefited every aspect of our lives, so much so that most of us only wish we'd started sooner. Wouldn't it be wonderful to gift the opportunity to children of today? Well, you can. The Morning Mile is a before-school walking and running program that gives children the chance to start each day in an active way while enjoying fun, music, and friends. That's every child, every day. It's also supported by a wonderful system of rewards, which keeps students highly motivated and frequently congratulated. Created by our favorite fitness expert, Fitz Kohler, Morning Milers across the country have run over 2 million miles and are having greater success with academics, behavior, and sports because of it. The Morning Mile is free to the child, free to the school, and is inexpensively funded by businesses or generous individuals. Help more kids get moving in the morning by visiting morningmile.com. Champion the program at your favorite school or find out more about sponsorship opportunities. That's morningmile.com. Long may you run.